The iron grip burned against the calloused knuckles of the traveler as he pressed the cold disk against the jagged rim of the precipice. It did not shine with the borrowed radiance of a star, nor did it reflect the bruised purple sky. Instead, it absorbed the ambient gloom, drinking the darkness until the surface of the metal turned black and oily like a wound. The air around the shadowed figure behind him did not ripple with life, but felt pressurized, a heavy silence that seemed to weigh down the very stones beneath his boots. The traveler felt a gravitational pull from the metal, dragging at the spirit like a hook buried in the soul. He knew that gazing would sever the tether to the flesh, but the vision he carried within his memory burned too brightly to extinguish. The disk flickered with a rhythm that matched his own erratic heartbeat, syncing the pulse of the dead with the frantic thrum of the living man who sought to possess it. Below his feet, the stone floor groaned, a deep tectonic sound that rattled the fillings in his teeth. The climb was not a matter of steps, but of surrender to the verticality of the structure. The architecture twisted in the night air, spires leaning at impossible angles, defying the gravity that held the world firm. He did not ascend by virtue of strength, but by the compulsion of a hunger that lived in the marrow. Every rung he touched felt slick, as if the metal was weeping oil from its pores. The traveler did not speak. The throat tightened, sealing the air before it could escape as a cry for help. The silence was not empty, but full of waiting whispers. The disk in his hand was warm, burning cold. The heat seeped through his gloves, finding purchase in the nerves where they were weakest. The tower stretched into the heavens like a broken finger, its stone walls scarred by erosion and centuries of neglect. There was no path up, only the crumbling spiral of the architecture itself, demanding a purchase where none should exist. As he climbed, the stones beneath his boots grew slick, with the viscous sweat of the earth itself leaking up from the foundation. The walls seemed to breathe, groaning in a low tectonic frequency that vibrated through the teeth of the ascending. He paused halfway, gasping for air that tasted of ozone and rotting fruit, though he made no sound to the night. The disk in his hands remained still, save for the way the light shifted across its surface, painting his face with shadows that had no source. The shadows were not cast by his form, but independent entities that moved with the geometry of the artifact. He had climbed the height to find the object of his longing. It was a gateway, a door that opened into a place where time did not flow. He reached for the handle of the disk, a grip that felt less like holding a tool and more like accepting a shackle. The metal bit into his skin, drawing the warmth of the blood to the surface. The skin around the contact points turned gray and waxy, dead even while he drew breath. The traveler could not break the bond of the transformation. To break the bond was to die, for the bond was the only thing that kept the void at bay. The void was not dark, but it was cold and it was hungry. The hunger was the only sensation that remained sharp and clear amidst the fog of his deteriorating mind. At the summit, the air was thin and dry, stripping the moisture from the lips and leaving the throat parched with the dust of the gods. The disk now hovered before him, detached from his grip, floating in the void. The traveler could feel them looking at him from within the metal, 1,000 pinholes watching his every tremor. He tried to speak, but his vocal cords tightened. The silence was absolute, a vacuum that consumed sound before it could be born. This was the moment where the intent of the journey shifted from desire to possession. The traveler realized he was looking into a mirror that showed only the hollows where his own mind used to reside. The reflection in the disk showed a man of ash and wire, a skeleton draped in rags. He fell inward. The structure of the tower seemed to liquefy the stone, turning to a gray gel that clung to his clothing. The traveler slid through the architecture as if it were made of water. The disk remained stable, a rigid anchor in the fluid world. It pulled him closer to its center, the light from its surface blinding. He saw the geometry of the object change, angles shifting until the face of the traveler was reflected not as a person but as a collection of jagged voids. He was becoming the drawing on the wall. The edges of his vision darkened, the world was retreating from him. The light from the disk expanded, consuming the night sky, the ground, and the memory of the world. The colors drained away, leaving a monochrome canvas where the only movement was the pulse of the artifact. The traveler reached out, but his arms were no longer flesh, but extensions of the metal. He could not feel the cold anymore. The disk merged with his chest, the cavity filled with a glowing cold heart. He was no longer separate from the light he pursued. The traveler was the light. The light was the traveler. There was no distinction between the self and the object of the quest. The tower behind him crumbled, the stone falling into dust that swirled upward. The dust suspended in the gravity of the artifact. The dust was ash, and the ash was the memory of the ground. There was a final moment of clarity, or perhaps it was a hallucination born of exhaustion. The traveler looked down from the spire, but he did not see the city. He saw a map of the world drawn in ink and ash, and he saw the path he had taken etched onto the land. He saw the path of the others who came before, the names scratched into the stone long since faded. The names were not written in ink, but carved by the absence of light. The traveler was the final name in the list. He accepted the title. He accepted the role of the guardian of the light. The light was heavy, heavier than the stone, heavier than the iron. The weight pressed on the shoulders that were no longer bone and the chest that breathed fire. The world faded from the edges, the colors dulling to monochrome. The traveler breathed, but the breath was silent, a whisper of steam in the freezing cold. The disk pulsed in time with the slowing of the heart. The heart was metal now. The blood was oil. The skin was porcelain. He had achieved the goal. He had the vision. But the vision had consumed the viewer. The observer was now part of the observed. There was no return. There was no down, no up, no forward, only the static point of the glowing artifact. The static point held the world in suspension. The suspension was the new reality. The reality of the light was absolute. In the distance, the ground below began to shake. The tower was gone. The earth was gone. Only the disk remained. It was the new sun. It was the new moon. The traveler was the monument to the quest. He was the statue in the garden of the dark. No one came to visit. No one came to look.